I wonder whether you could just do me a quick sound check, folks, and tell me whether you can hear me and see me. So if you can, just pop a comment in the live chat for me. I know everything's working, and I will be with you in 3 minutes and 47 seconds. See you shortly. Hello, good evening everyone, and welcome to the show. And I've just realised my slides are on the wrong page. Right, let me fix that. Bear with me. Right, let's try that again. Good evening folks, welcome to In Studio Live, the 74th edition, and we're talking about working with reflectors tonight. And a small select audience by the looks of it. I suspect most people are off out enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the bank holiday weekend if you are in the UK. Those of you who that doesn't apply to. Where are you? Right, okay. Welcome to the show tonight. I'm quite tired. I've driven back home from Bristol, been down in Bristol for a day, just to deal with a few things to do with my father-in-law's house. And I'm back home. I've been home well, I got to the house for about an hour and then came out here. So if I fall asleep during the live stream, please forgive me. That's the reason why on that. So my usual plea at the start, if you are new to the live stream, please subscribe, like and share. That helps me. And when you subscribe, hit that bell icon. It's the little bell at the next to the subscribe button on YouTube. And that way you'll get notifications of what's going on. If you're not a member of the Facebook group, the link's down below. That's where I grab images from to talk about. It's where the conversation carries on during the week. And it's also just a great place to hang out and sign up for my newsletter. There should be one going out tomorrow because I've got some announcements to make to do with events at the studio. So that hopefully will be tomorrow. Yeah, that's my bank holiday Monday, folks. Right, carry on. Yeah, it's an interactive show, so please take the time to say hello in the live chat. Ask questions there. I put it down as interactive now rather than Q&A. It's still the Q&A that it always used to be. It's just I don't get as many questions, which is a shame, especially as I'll need them for next week, because next week's one of those periodic sort of catch-up sessions. I'll talk about it later. And so I'm doing live Q&A next Sunday. So if I don't have any questions, it's going to be a very short one next week. And talking about short shows, tonight is going to be a short show as well. It's a bank holiday weekend. I'm tired, you're tired, and to be honest, I think we'd all rather be outside in the sunshine, wouldn't we? So I've not got a particular teaching section other than what's in the before and after challenge video this week. I'm going to do some image feedback, issue you with the latest before and after challenge on there, which is all about reflectors, and I'll be talking about member photo of the week. So yeah, if you haven't said hello in the chat, please do so. It's great to see the usual faces in there: Tim, Peter, Paul, Bob, Rick, Terry. Hi folks. And those of you who watch and don't bother to, but don't put anything in there, you know, you can always just say hi, and then at least I know you're there. Or did I scare you all off last week? Anyway, here we are, and let's see what happens with the show. So I'm going to start off with some feedback, and as ever, I'm giving priority to the images which have been sent to me at feedback@ians-studio.co.uk, of which I've only got one this evening. Oh, hi Paul Geddes, just seeing you arrive in the chat on there. So let me get, oh, and Tony, you're all arriving, you're all getting here. Right, Lightroom for me. So let me get this set up because I want to talk a little bit about the images I have got here. Right, let's see. Yep, there we go. And these images are from Peter Stanford. He's doing the before and after challenge, and he's done the night shot. And there was a question associated with these. He sent me. He was trying to send me the raw file with the edits, and he couldn't. So he sent me the raw file and the JPEG. And before I get into talking about Peter's images, I just want to actually talk a little bit about supplying images this way. In fact, what Peter did is probably the safest way to provide me with images, and that is to send the raw file and after you've done your edits, export a JPEG so that I can see what the final image is. Now, the question that Peter asked is, why weren't the edits coming over when he sent the raw file? That is because the way things like Lightroom and Photoshop and other raw editing software works is that it's non-destructive editing, and that means, with a couple of exceptions, your edits aren't actually stored in your raw file. They are stored either in your editing software such as Lightroom, or they are stored in a companion file, which is typically .xmp, which goes alongside it. So if you've got a .xmp file next to your raw file in the folder that it's in, send that as well, because that gives the edits. There is an exception to all of this. One of the exceptions is DNG files. DNG files don't have the sidecar file to them. What the DNG format is a clever format where it has effectively 3 halves to it. I mean that. No, there's 3 sections to it. One of which I never use, and the other 2 are critical. And those 3 sections within the file are the DNG raw data, the XMP data, including any processing settings, and the third area allows it to embed the original raw file before it's converted to DNG. That part I never use, because all you're going to do is make your file twice as large. So I never use it. I've never had need to go back to a raw file after converting to DNG. I will give you one caveat on that. If you enter certain prestigious competitions, they want to see your original raw file and will not accept a DNG file for that, because the DNG file could be generated after the processing and they want to see the original file. So if you're likely to do that, then that's the time you may want to embed it, because you can extract it, I believe. I've never done it, but I believe it's possible. Or keep the original CR2, CR3, NEF, ARW file, whatever raw format your original files come in, keep it on one side, if those are the sort of competitions you are likely to enter. I'm not, because I don't do competitions, photo competitions like that, so it's not a big deal for me that I couldn't produce my original raw file. I've got a DNG which has everything in that I need. Right, so that's the thing. If you are supplying a raw file, you might want to convert to DNG because they're a little bit smaller anyway, and your settings would be stored in there. If not, look for the .xmp sidecar file, which will have your settings, because then when I load it into Lightroom, it will read that and I will see exactly what you've changed in Lightroom to get the image that you've presented. Now, there is one other caveat with all that, and that is I could change this raw file to my heart's content, send an XMP file or send the DNG file on there, and it still wouldn't get the settings coming through. So what's going on? What's going on is a setting in Lightroom, which, if I go full screen, you'll see this a little bit better. File, catalog settings, metadata, and you see this one here, automatically write changes to XMP. If that is clear, and it is clear by default within Lightroom, that means those settings I talked about are only ever going to live within Lightroom. There's not going to be an XMP file created, and they're not going to be written out to your DNG file either. I always recommend that is ticked and that it's automatically done, because it provides effectively a form of backup to the settings that you do in Lightroom. There is a slight processing overhead for it, but I do recommend that you have that ticked in Lightroom. If you don't have it ticked and you do a change on a file, actually, I'll show you this by unticking it. Edit, catalog settings. Let's remove that. Okay. If I now go to this file and let's just do some wacky changes to it, darken that down. Oh, let's give it a lovely color cast. No, a blue one, a blue color cast. It's night. Make it really vibrant. These, by the way, are not settings I would normally do, but I want you to see that there has been changes here. If I now go back to grid, if you notice on here, yes, that's updated, but we've got this little icon here at the top. And if I hover over it, it says metadata file needs to be updated. That's because I have done changes. They haven't been written out because that checkbox isn't checked. So how do I update it? Well, there's two ways. I can click on that, or I can go Control S, and it says metadata. Yep, it will save it to those formats. Continue, and away we go. It's gone on there, or this one, which also appears to have it. If I click on it, it just says, do you want to save it? And yes, I do, on there. So I'm going to reset that setting on there. Preferences, no, not preferences. Catalog settings, and check that so I don't have to do it all the time. Right, let me go back and reset that. So that's the little background, and hopefully that answers the question, Peter, on why you couldn't send the raw file with those settings on there. If you want to know about converting to DNG, have a look on the channel. I've got a video dedicated to that, and that will tell you how to do the conversion to DNG. And there's a separate video which even tells you how to find the files in your Lightroom catalog that haven't yet been converted to DNG. So you might want to have a look at those two videos. Right, okay, looking at these two files that Peter sent as part of the before and after challenge. That was his final edit, and it's a good edit. I like it, Peter. And that's the sort of thing I would be doing with a file. There's been some compression in there. If I go into 100%, I don't know whether you can see this on the video, but if I come in, there's a little bit of blockiness in here on the building, and that looks like it's JPEG type blockiness to it as well. I'm going to go over to the original file, and hopefully I won't be seeing that. So now if I come in, no hint of any blockiness on there. So right, what sort of changes would I do on here? Probably similar to what you've done, Peter, in that I would bring up those shadows on it. I would also try and enhance the blueness of the sky just a little bit, and I'd use dehaze to do that. Maybe just bring the blacks up a touch, a bit of vibrance to it all, not that much on there, and let's see, bring the highlights down a fraction because I want to bring the exposure up just a little bit. So I would end up with something like that. Let's see how that compares with, that was your original edit and that was mine, so there's not a great deal in it. Yeah, you've cropped in a little bit tighter than I have. I probably would crop that as well, so it's a nice sort of crop that you've done. I think you went to about there, didn't you? And we don't need all the shrubbery off there, so something like that. So yeah, a really good image. a good example of the exercise. Let me just have a look at your settings for it. XF on here, and 35mm focal length, 30 seconds, f22, yep. And how sharp is it? It's not too bad actually on there for f22. F22 is never going to be perfectly sharp on an image on that. So yeah, not a bad shot at all, Peter. I hope the exercise of going through the 20 minutes shooting it, I hope you found that helpful to sort of really focus your mind on when the best time is to get those photos on there. So that's all I really want to say about that. Just well done. So that's it. Right, okay, so back to where, oh, we've had a few comments in the chat, so let's have a look what's been going on while I've been waffling on here. S numbers 1 in the chat says, is it possible to focus on 2 different points at once? No. Well, the answer to that is technically no. You focus at one point. That's basic physics optics, I'm afraid. The exception to it is some cameras allowed you to set a near point and a far point. This was in the film days, and I had an old Canon body which allowed me to do that. And then it set an appropriate aperture to try and give that as your depth of field on there. So it will or may allow you some cameras would allow you to do that. The answer behind it on there is probably because there are 2 things you want to have in focus. Basically, what you are looking at is not 2 points of focus, but a depth of field that covers both of your points of interest. And there are tools which will help you work out that depth of field, including, but not limited to, Martin Bailey's Photographer's Friend app, which I believe is an iPhone app. I don't know yet whether it's been ported over to Android, because I'm not an Android user on that. And Rick's also recommending Hyperfocal, which is another one that does it as well. Right, carrying on through the comments. Max Horn Music. I don't recognise the ID on there. Max, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Got to get that in there. Right. Max says he has a question about RAWs, and when I import the RAWs from my Sony a6000, they open fine in Photoshop's Camera Raw program. But when I import the RAWs from my Canon 500D, they won't. No, I don't have any initial thoughts on that, because the 500D has been around for a long time, and as Rick has said, it's been supporting Camera Raw for years. Right. What I would suggest, Max, is I have an email address that I use for feedback. It's feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. It should be mentioned down in the description. If you want to WeTransfer one of those RAW files over to me, I'm happy to try and open it in Lightroom and Photoshop myself, just to confirm that it's not a problem with the RAW files on there for you. If you want to do that, send it over via WeTransfer. You'll have to use WeTransfer because the file size will be too high to send via email. If you're not familiar with WeTransfer, just Google it. It's a really easy system where you just go to a web page, you upload the image, you put in my email address. I think you have to register first of all, but it's a very quick process. and it uploads to their server. They send me a link, I download from their server, and it's held there for 7 days, which is long enough for me to get the file. And it's rapidly becoming an industry standard method of transferring large files. So I'm happy to have a go at that for you and just confirm for you that they really do open on there. Yeah. Oh, you said in the comment that they still open in Lightroom. That's yeah, and then the follow-on question from Max saying, can raw files become corrupt at all? Yes, any file can become corrupt. It's unusual. If you can open it in one format, in one program, then the chances are it's not corrupt. It's either corrupt or it isn't. It's one of those things. So yeah, interesting that you're struggling just to open it in Photoshop. Have you got the latest version of Photoshop installed? I think would be the question on that, and the latest version of Adobe Camera Raw. Make sure those are up to date on there, because if you're using an older version of Photoshop, there could be some incompatibilities with Adobe Camera Raw and the version you've got, or you've got the updated version of Photoshop but an old version of Camera Raw. That sort of thing could happen on there. But yeah, as I said, I'm happy to try and open one and confirm that it's all working on there. So hope that helps. Hope that helps. Right. Okay. Moving along. The before and after challenge. This is something that's going on at the moment, and if you're new to this and want to have a go at it, then I'd encourage you to do so. It's not a race against time, this challenge. You can do it at your own pace. You can be weeks, months, years behind everyone else. The purpose of doing the challenge is to really help you understand what your camera gear is capable of, and what the settings actually give you. And these are sort of things that people don't get you to do. It's the photographic equivalent of playing scales for music. I've used this analogy before. If you're a musician, you will play scales, and it helps you with the coordination. You'd never do it in a concert, and what I'm teaching you, some of these exercises, you probably would never do in real life, but actually going through them helps you understand what capability is there. So for anyone who's not familiar with the challenge, the idea is there's different stages, and I think in total there's going to be 14 stages, which is before, 12 exercises, and after is the way it works. And we're just over halfway through the exercises now, and the feedback I'm getting from people is that you're finding it helpful, finding it interesting to really delve into what your camera can do and what the settings help you to do. So just to summarize the challenge for anyone who's new to this, and I won't go into this in as much detail each week, but it starts off with you doing a set of before images. It's go to a location and just try to get a sense of place for that location. One of my live streams has a whole section about how to do that. So go back 8 weeks or so now, I should think, 8 or 9 weeks, find that one and do those before images. If you've dabbled on 1 or 2 of the exercises, I'd really like to encourage you, go right back to the start, do those before images, and then work your way through the rest of the challenges. Yes, skip over the ones you've already done, but do the others on there. And the process behind it will help you with your photography. The first exercise might seem really simple, but it's actually not as simple as it looks. It's purely about composition and finding different ways of photographing one subject, and that will give you a flavour of how to work a scene. It's something that you don't see people teaching about, and it's so important that you think about a scene and think about how you're going to get the best out of it. And that might not be on the first shutter click, it might not be on the first shot. You might have to work at it to get that. And then about freezing and blurring the action, because being able to get those sharp shots when you want them and being able to get that blurring when you want it, that should be instinctive in the photographer. So an exercise to help you understand how that happens is there. Then exercise 3 was all about controlling depth of field with your aperture. Again, pretty basic stuff, but have you actually taken the time to look and see with your camera, your lenses, what that difference in depth of field actually is when creating a subject, creating an image? And then we take it to the next level with exercise 4, and it's ostensibly about lenses and focal length. But what it's showing you is how that can introduce distortion, compression, and how you can get this lovely out of focus background that everyone craves by choosing the right focal length. And it will help you really understand how you can do that with your kit. It's all very well me showing you what's possible with my cameras and my lenses, but you need to know what's possible with yours on there. Then night photography, a very much misunderstood area of photography because it's not done at night. And it goes through the magic window for it because people just don't always find that the right time to do it. And then last week I did an exercise on exposure compensation, and it's really all about dealing with when the light isn't what you want for your image and how you deal with that. And part of it shows that it's not just a standard thing. So you might frame it up one way and use a certain value for exposure compensation, but because of the way your camera meters, if you then change to a vertical shot, or you put your subject in the middle rather than on the side, or at the side rather than on the middle, you might need a slightly different value for exposure compensation. And it's about understanding that. Again, something that you don't really hear people talk about, but is so true about photography. What level of exposure compensation you need will vary from shot to shot, even if it's the same subject, just because of how you've composed it. And then we come on to this week's exercise, which is all about reflectors. Which is an interesting little subject in its own right, and it can make a huge difference to your portraiture if you do outdoor portraiture. And I know at least one person on the call on the live stream tonight, Tim, mentioning no names, does a lot of this. So this is the sort of thing which might be helpful for him. But it's also helpful for anyone who does tabletop stuff indoors using natural light. And I see a lot of people with images like that, but this will show you how you can get the best out of that. And rather than me rabbiting on about it, I'm going to play in a video which will take you through this whole idea of reflectors and tabletop photography, but the principles still apply if it's portraiture outside. I've done it with a Cyber King model, as you can see on the screen, but the whole thing applies with portraiture as well for those of you who are portrait photographers. So with that, I'm going to shut up for I'm going to shut up live, and you're going to listen to me recorded on video as I show you the exercise. Hello, welcome to In Studio. I'm Ian M. Butterfield. This is exercise 7 in the before and after challenge. Today we're looking at reflectors. Now, your standard reflector looks something like this, and you would use it to bounce light onto your subject, and it can be silver, it could be gold, it could be white, or it could actually even be black. That's actually more of a flag that blocks light, but that's the way they come. But although we could look at doing this whole exercise with something like this, I want the exercise to be achievable for anybody without the need for something like that. So let's get rid of that reflector. Instead, we're going to do it tabletop style. And I'm using a Cyber King figurine. It's a Doctor Who villain on there. I've put it on a table, slightly raised up so it's a much more comfortable height to work with. A bit of green paper on the foreground. In the background, there's just some black, basically flag boards that I use in the studio. You can use whatever you want, ideally a plain background. So, the other thing I need to say about this is, so you can see me while I'm recording the video, I've got the studio lights on. The photos were all made with those lights on, so that the only source of illumination is the window light coming in on the side of the figurine. And what I want you to do with this is I want you to find your own equivalent to the Cyber King. It can be whatever you want. And set up with just the light coming from one side on there, all of the light in the room turned off, and then create an image. And you can see with that image that the figurine is dark on one side because we've only got light coming in from one side, and that can be a nice moody effect, but not everything you will photograph wants that kind of look to it. So we need to bounce light back in. Do we need a big fancy reflector like the one I showed you at the beginning? Absolutely not. All you need is a bit of white card and something to hold it in place. I'm using a simple A-clamp, which I put on the bottom there, and I can place that next to my figure and frame that up so that the card's not in there. And you can see now how much more light is bounced back, how that dark side to the statue is illuminated. Not only that, but we can control the amount of light that comes onto that side to get exactly the look that we're looking for. And I'd like you to do this exercise as well. Create a shot without a bounce board in there, and then put the card in, and put it in really tight so that you can just see it on the edge of the shot. And then move it out, take another shot, move it out until it's a long way away from the image. And let me just show you a sequence of shots of the card being moved further away. And as you look at it, you can see the amount of light that's being bounced back is reduced. And this is to give you an idea of how you can control the light with just a simple bit of card like this. Now, do we have to use card like that? No, absolutely not. And with my big reflector, I had the option of gold sides, I had the option of silver sides, white sides. Well, here, for a figurine, I might just use a bit of tin foil. And again, I can clamp that. He says clamping it the right way around. Put it on there and put that in. And you'll see with that, it also bounces light in, but because it's silver, it becomes the light that's bounced in is a bit more specular. It's got little points of light into it. It's not just a smooth lighting of the side. Now, if you haven't got a silver tray like that, why not get a piece of card, get some tin foil, scrumple it all up, smooth it out, and then glue it onto the one side of a piece of card. Now, when you do that, put it with the dull side up, not the shiny side, because that will work a bit more effectively. And it's also, if you are using this, using that bit of card as a reflector with a human being, then it avoids them getting dazzled by using the duller side. So try that. The other thing you can try is you could try using a mirror. And this, of course, is the most effective of devices for shining light back on a scene. So again, put it on my A clamp there, put that just out of shot over there, and take that image. And here you can see there is a lot more light coming in from that compared to either the silver or the white card on there. Which would you use? Depends on what it is that you're photographing. So you've got various things to try on that. Now, would this work with a person? Absolutely. And I haven't got a person here in the studio to show, but I have got resident model Shirley, and I can put her in, and I can a little bit of reframing on this. I can do the same sort of effect with the reflector, and I can put the reflector in again and show you that with it. So yes, you can do it with people. So if you haven't got a suitable figurine, model, or object around the house to do this with, you can do the same exercise with a person. And in fact, there's a lot of very good reasons for doing it with a person, and to see how using a reflector can really improve the portraits that you make. So once you have done the exercise, the things I want you to look at are the different qualities of the light that's being bounced back in, how that affects your image, the difference it makes by just having any reflector in there, and perhaps post 2 or 3 different images without the reflector, with a reflector, and maybe with a different type of reflector to my Facebook group for this week's exercise. So thanks for watching, and if you don't already know, the link to the Facebook group I'm talking about is down below in the description. I look forward to seeing your images there, and until next time, thanks for watching and keep making great photos. Bye for now. Right, so that is this week's exercise on reflectors on there. I hope you'll find it helpful, and I hope it will crystallize in your own mind how you can control the light that way. Right, now moving on with my slides. Next, I just want to say about the sponsorship of the live stream. As ever, it's sponsored by you. If you do find these live streams helpful and you're a regular viewer, do think about buy me a cup of tea as a thank you. It's basically BuyMeACoffee that YouTubers use, links down below. I don't drink coffee, I don't like the stuff, but I do drink a lot of tea, so I have a Buy Me a Tea link, and that's it. I say also down below. And each week I say thank you to somebody who's bought me a cup of tea, and this week my thanks goes to Roger Tibbs for this week's cuppa. Thanks, Roger, really appreciate it. That's nice. Right, now, anything new in the interactive? Nothing that I can see in there from when I last looked at it. I've just realized I probably don't have a slide here for the demo that I was going to do tonight. So I'm going to do it at this point, I think. Yeah, this is a good point to do it. And it's a demo and technique in Affinity. So I've started doing a little bit of Affinity tutorials. I'm still getting to grips with Affinity. What I'm about to show you can be done in Lightroom, not Lightroom, in Photoshop, exactly the same way to this. Just the the display looks slightly different, but I'm doing it in Affinity on here. And what this tutorial is, it's all about really, the reason I've put it on one about reflectors, it's almost a digital version of reflectors and flags. It's it's dodge and burn, it's sculpting, it's almost body sculpting, it's enhancing the definition. This isn't about skin softening, there's no skin softening going on this, but I'm going to show you how we can just help bring out the detail on a subject. Now, the model here is Maddie, who was part of the water splash event that I did just over a week ago now. And what I'm going to do with this, we've got it as a layer in Affinity. I'm going to create 2 new layers above, and those are 1 and 2. They are transparent layers. I'm going to name one of them Lighten, and the other I'm going to name Darken. I'm actually then going to shift click and I'm going to put them both into a group and expand it. I'm going to create one more layer and put it below my image, and I'm just going to hide the image at the moment, because what I want to do is I want to set the color on here as mid-gray, and mid-gray, there's various ways you can set it in here. If you like using your hex codes, it's 808080 on there. And I'm going to use the fill bucket and close that. So I've now filled that area in there. Put my image back up. So that's so that I've got something which I can look at later, just to show you something. The other 2, what I'm going to do with those, I'm going to change the modes on them. From normal, he says, trying to remember this one now, to overlay or screen. Mine's gone blank. No, it's got to be overlay. It's got to be overlay. I might end up changing this in a minute. I'm just going to grab a brush on here. This is why normally I do my Affinity I have been intending to do Affinity tutorials pre-recorded, because I'm less au fait with it. Now, what I need to do with this is set a low flow, and I would do something about 4% for me. It wants to be a really soft brush, so low hardness on there with it. And the opacity, I set the opacity down typically about 30–40%, so that I can build this up. So now I've got my brush, and the color I want on the lighten is I want white. So again, I come up here, click on that and choose pure white, close. Now I'm going to zoom in on this, and I've just realized I haven't got the yeah, right, that's what I was after, the zoom in. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to enhance where the shadow and light is on the image. Let me go full screen at this point and you can see what I'm doing. So I'm using the square brackets to reduce the size of the brush, and I'm looking for the areas where the light is. So we've got area of light here, and I'm just going to start painting down on that, and that would just lighten it a little bit. Now I just want to check the effect on there. You see, it just helps to lighten that. And because I'm starting to second guess myself on this after that mind thing, let me just prove to myself, if nothing else, that screen. So, hang on. Oh, I'm sorry about this, folks. I'm really tired at the moment. No, it's. Right, I'm just going to find the areas which are light. So just here, I'm just going to lighten that up. Because I've got this low flow, I can just paint over it gently on there. No, it's not screen. It's definitely overlay. It's got to be overlay. That's it. On there. And that just lightens those areas where that is. So I'm just going to build this up. And I want to just lighten the area where the eye is here. Just to make that a little bit lighter in here, and hold the space bar. I can move this around, and again using the square bracket to just highlight those light areas. And I'm just going to a little bit of light on top of the cheekbones there and around here, just to lighten that up on there. And control and scroll wheel to move out space. I can move this down. And now make my brush a little bit lighter, and I'm just going to lighten those edges a little bit and move this down. Where I see in the hair, I'm just going to go over the lighter areas on there, around the edge here, and particularly down here. Just give it a little bit more on that. Now, going back over here, I can just turn that on and off, and you can see the difference that's making. It's just bringing in that extra light in those areas, which gives that a little bit more dimension to the image. So I think that's possibly, oh yeah, there's a little bit more light on that shoulder, I think, around the edge there. A slightly bigger brush for that, just to soften it in on there, and make it a little bit shorter, smaller, and again just lighten the air. And basically I'm following where the light is at the moment, and I'm enhancing just those sections, and it just gives the image a much more three-dimensional look to it in post-production. So we just do that. Right, so that's the lighter sections with it. And again, let's just toggle it on and off so you can see the difference and how it's just sort of brought up those areas in there. Now let's turn our attention to the darken section. And on here, again, we want screen. No, we want overlay. Oh, mine's going tonight. This time I want a black brush. So double click on there, set that to black. And again, I'm just going to leave it with the settings, a flow of 4, hardness 14, and this low opacity. Now I'm going to do a similar sort of idea, but I'm going to go over some of the shadow areas. Again, take my brush down a little bit, and under the cheeks here, I'm just going to sort of paint in a little bit more of the. So what I'm actually doing is I'm emphasizing Maddie's cheekbones there on that. So just on there. On the nose, under the nose, if I zoom in on there, small brush, and I've already lightened on one side, just darken slightly on there, and it just makes that look a little bit more three-dimensional. And underneath the lips, just a slight touch of darkening underneath there, just to give it this three-dimensional look, and maybe just a little bit under here. We've got a small area here which I might want to just add a little bit more to on there, something like that. That's probably gone too far actually with that one. Just take that one back. I'll redo because I've just lost one I didn't mean. Go back down to there. Right, and Control out on here. I'm going to darken underneath the chin on here as well. So just emphasize that sort of area. Remember, it's following where the shadows are for it. So again, I'm just making this appear a little bit more three-dimensional by just adding in these darker sections. I might just darken the eyebrows just a fraction on there, just to do that and make them a bit more intense. And I think that's about it. So I'll just toggle the shadows in and out that I've added in there. And you can see the whole difference by toggling. That's without the Photoshop work, and that's with. And it just gives that more three-dimensional look to the image. So what have I actually left in there? If I toggle off the image, this is why I created the grey area below. We can see that's what I've painted in. So we can see the different sections of it. Sometimes people do this on a grey layer and then paint black and white over the top of it. I prefer to do them on separate layers so that I can then look at each one, and if I'd made a mistake, and put both of those back in, and let's do an obvious mistake on here, maybe on the forehead. For some bizarre reason, I decided I was doing something. I've ended up with this really dark spot on the middle of the forehead. Because everything is on its own layer, I can simply go to the erase brush, and I can just simply erase that section, and it's only going to affect the darkened layer. If I got lightened bits underneath, because I think I had done some lightening around the eyes, that's not going to affect the lightened area. I can get rid and manipulate each layer independently. So that's the technique, and I've included this as part of my session on reflectors, because effectively some of the things that we're doing here is doing what a reflector does. It adds that little, depending on how you use it, can add that extra bit of contrast in there. And I'm just adding light in to certain areas. So again, final look, before and after, just adds that, particularly to do with the cheeks. It really emphasizes the cheekbone structure and the shape underneath the nose as well, particularly on there. I've done it on a portrait here. You can also do it on art nudes. I'll be honest with you, it's not a technique I do very often at all, but it's one that's in the arsenal of tools, as it were, that I could choose to use if I wanted to do that kind of processing on an image. And that's how I would do it in Affinity. The differences in Photoshop are absolutely minimal. It's the same overlays idea on there. So yeah, it is what it is. Right, okay, let's see what's been going on in chat whilst that's been going on. Right, let's see. Max has got a question for me. I have an editing question for you. I took some awesome photos of the moon the other night during the lunar eclipse and had one had some clouds, but how can I bring out the clouds more? Right, okay. How can you bring out the clouds more? I would think about using Probably the clarity tool might help with that, to help bring them out with it, because that would add contrast to your midtones on there. Again, if you want me to have next week, I'm going to be doing feedback on the Sunday night and dealing with sort of with questions. What I suggest, Max, is if you can send me one of those files during the week, to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. If you send that to me during the week, I'll include it next Sunday night, and I'll do an edit on it and show you how I would bring out the details, rather than me trying to describe it just off the top of my head, because what the techniques I would use might vary when I see the image, but my initial thought is use clarity on there. You might get somewhere with dehaze as well. That does some interesting things, and texture. That sort of area of processing I would look at. There may be some other ways we could do it as well to enhance that. Another question's come in while I've been trying to answer that one. This one's from Tim, who says, I can guess answers to this, but I'm interested nevertheless. When might you prefer to use a diffuser between the sun and subject rather than a reflector? Right, okay. First of all, the fact that diffusers come as part of a 5-in-1 reflector, do not confuse their uses. They have completely different uses. A reflector adds light into a scene. A diffuser effectively cuts out light from a scene. The main reason I would use a diffuser is if I've got speckledy light, I've got harsh light, and I want soft light. Effectively, it converts harsh light into soft light. So those are the times I would use it. In particular, and I know you know this because I've gone through this with you on a one-to-one, Tim, about using it in speckled light. So if you were shooting under a tree and you've got little bits of light coming through, it's a great way of dealing with that. If you've got a harsh midday sun and you get those panda eyes from the harsh sunlight, use that to effectively create that diffused area around the face of your subject. Those are the times you would use it. So yes, to answer your question, yes, you do know the answer to this, but it's worth going through it for everyone's benefit anyhow. So thank you for the question. Right, where are we on my slides? We are at feedback. So as I said, that's the address for sending images to me. What I'm going to do now is look at images that you sent me in. Oh, yeah. Oh, I know why. Yeah, last week I did them the other way around and I haven't fully updated all my slides for it. So yeah, it's feedback, but this time the feedback is the stuff from Facebook, from images I found in the Facebook group and what we can do with those. Hey, I said this was going to be a short one. It's not turned out to be yet. So, right, Lightroom. Lightroom? Yeah, Lightroom. Right, let's have a look at some of the images. Right, this one from Paul Geddes. I know I showed a couple of images from this shoot last week, particularly the one from Richard Lovelock. This was created at the event I was running just over a week ago. That's Maddie, who you've just seen me editing. This was the water splash, water wig effect, and Paul has absolutely nailed it on this. Probably one of the best water wig images I have seen on there. So kudos to Paul for that image. Some good editing gone on with it as well. I think there was a little bit of touch up done on that shot. I'll take the credit for the throwing of the water. That's down to me, but the rest is all Paul's work. So well done, Paul, on that. And I just really wanted to share that one with you because it's such a cracking shot. If you do competitions, Paul, that's a winner, I'm sure. Right, Sonia has submitted this one. It's a street scene. I don't know whether you watched the live stream or not, Sonia, but I asked a question about one of your images last week. I thought you'd done a sky replacement on it, and I still don't know whether you had or hadn't with the one I did last week, that we looked at last week. I like this one. Normally these sort of street scenes, I like to see the street as well, but the focus and the intention on this is clearly on the signs with it. So happy with the looking up. Love the colours on there. Nice, bright, vibrant, good range of colours, dynamic range on there. Really works. Well done, Sonia, on that. John Barton submitted this street image. I don't know whether it's because it's a Facebook image or whether the problem's with the original, but that is quite soft on my screen with that. And if I show you there, it is a little bit on the soft side, that shot. I do like the individuals in there. It's a nice capture on there. The only thing, as you and I think most people know, that make me a little bit uneasy about this sort of thing is the thing about permission, etc. on photos. Although I find it hard to believe that they didn't know you were there with that, and nobody seems to be upset about you taking photos, so I'll let that one pass. Right, this one is by Gary Gabitas, and this is a sunset image. There's a few things I would do with this, Gary. So I'm going to go into develop module on here. Now, one of the things with sunsets is the chances are your camera was set to auto white balance, which means the camera will take out a lot of the orange color in there. So I tend to end up putting that back in post-production. So I really warm that up, which means I then need to just bring the exposure down, which gives us back this nice golden look. A little bit up on the shadows, but not much. I think we're fine on the clarity and vibrance on there. So I would tend to do something like that with it, which I think will probably bring back more the emotion of that sunset than the original. So before and after, that's before, that's after. So really the main thing I've done is just to warm it up to make it look more of this sunset feel to it on there. John Barton, right, had got this shot and he had a problem. The problem was that when he tried to straighten the horizon, which actually I think you've overdone on that image, he's lost the feet of the dog, which is a bit of a no-no. Also a bit noisy on the background. So I'm going to try and do an edit on this one and try and show you how we can deal with this missing foot so that we don't lose it. I'm going to try in Lightroom initially. I may have to go into Photoshop to solve this one. So I'm going to start off by bringing the exposure up. It is badly underexposed. So just bring that up and bring the shadows up to something like that. Now we've got this problem with the horizon. Now if I was to just do this kind of adjustment to sort it out and get it to something like that, then what you see is we've lost the foot down at the bottom here. However, there is another way of doing this. So I'm going to reset that and I'm going to go down into transform. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a horizontal transform. Do it. And can you see how it's now straightening up that horizon on there? So we've got that. Now, will that allow me to keep the foot of the dog in there? Well, looking where the white is, not quite on that. So what can I do with this? I'm going to have one last go on here because I haven't tried this before on this image, and maybe do a little bit of a rotate with it. Yeah, it becomes really tricky to actually do it in here. So I'm going to sort of abandon that attempt in there, which is what I thought I would have to do. And instead, I'm going to go into Adobe Photoshop to actually solve this one. So, edit. If anyone's wondering by that extra dialog box, it's because I haven't got the latest version of Adobe Camera Raw. There was a bug in the version I had. Right, so now I need to effectively just bring this side up to straighten that horizon. So Alt, just to zoom out a little bit on this. And to help me with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Control T. Actually, first of all, I'm going to unlock the background. Control T, which gives me free transform. And I'm just going to grab hold of the one corner. If I hold the Control key down, I can move just one corner. And you can see now I can bring up that one side alone to actually solve this problem. And I'm more or less now getting that horizon where I want it on there. So bringing it up, and if I'm going to tilt it in just a fraction as well, and then I'll recrop this. So have we got it straight yet? I'm not sure whether I have. I'm going to put on some the rulers because I want to put some oh, I need to do that temporarily. View. Right, show rulers. There we are, Control R, because then I can bring down a guide just to check on that. Not quite. So what I'm going to do now, Control T again, and this time I'm going to compress on this side a little bit and down here. So hold the Control key. I can't go too far down on there. Can I bring that down just a fraction? Bring it down so far, but I've got to just watch that I don't go below where his head is, because that's where I'm going to be cropping. So I can go down as far as there. I think that's more or less it on that. So I'm going to go with that. Then I crop down on there and crop in on that. And come out of crop. So now it's more or less there. Then the other thing I would then do, just to try and sort this out, would be I could possibly do a warp on it just to distort. Oh, I can't find it. I'm too tired. It's close enough, but that's the sort of approach I would take, John, with that image. So if I exit from there, yes. And down on there, you can see that's more or less sorted it. It's not perfectly true, the horizon, but we're close enough on there that unless you put a rule on it, you probably wouldn't know that that wasn't straight. And we've kept the paw in there. I might just add a little bit of vibrance to it, and I definitely do a little bit of noise reduction. So detail, bring up that noise reduction on there, and then with the sharpening, maybe just a little bit of contrast on there. I would, holding the Alt key down just to sharpen it a little bit, which I'd probably go quite a way because I'm going to mask it back right back to the edges on there. A little bit too halo-y on that. Can I do it by bringing that? No, still halo-y. We'll bring that back and bring that back. Still a little bit of haloing. I'm just going to keep bringing it back until I get rid of that halo. I think that's about as far as I can go with it on there. But that's the sort of thing I would do. So let's just compare that with, that was the original and that's the edit. So a little bit stretched, but I don't think it's a big problem. If you don't like the stretched on it, you can just pull it outwards on there. So right, moving on. What have we got next? Oh, I'd obviously managed to skip over. Ah, right, no, okay, I see what's happened. Another quick one for John on here. It's a sort of an HD, it's been pushed too far, I think, this. There's the problem with these sort of speckledy areas on it. I think I'm not keen on this style. It looks too much HDR on there. For me, I'm not a fan of it. You said you didn't like the car on that. I don't object to the car. When you did crop it, you just cropped in and made it long and thin. I would also come up at the bottom as well if I was going to do that. But I don't think the light was good for that subject, in my honest opinion. Oh, Peter's ones we've looked at, that was before he got the correct lighting, and then that was afterwards on there. I've said enough about that already. Another nice shot from Sonia. Sonia, again, this looks like a sky replacement to me. I'd love to know whether you're replacing skies on some of these shots. As I said last time, I used to work for the Met Office, and so I spent several months studying clouds, and so that doesn't feel right to me on there. I'm probably one of the few people who would spot it, but I'd love to know whether you have done a sky replacement on that or not. Moving on. Peter, I like this. I like this feather. I'm assuming this is one of those times where a bird had just dropped a feather and it happens to have stuck in. You've come down low shot, that shallow depth of field with it. There's nice detail in the feather. The whole thing has really worked and it's quite intriguing. Nicely on the third line, you've got a third line, an implied third line here as well of the in focus versus the bokeh background on it on there. So lovely shot, Peter, well done. Paul submitted 2 images from one of the challengers, and they're not consecutive in my display, just showing how that he's been able to get the figurine head correctly exposed despite the background. So yeah, absolutely well done on that, Paul. Good shot. Brigitte, I think it's the first one of yours. I really like this. Lovely colours in the sky and in the scene. Nicely processed on there. We've lost a little bit of detail in the shadows, but nothing that I'm over worried about. This is a Facebook image, so I can't bring much of it back on the shadows slider, and I don't think there's much to bring back anyway with it on that. The only thing I would say is the sculpture here in the foreground. I would do one of 2 things with it. I'd either use a wider angle lens and I'd stand the other side of it so it's completely out of the shot, or I would frame my shot so that the base of it is in there rather than it just going out of the frame. And that's a minor thing. I love the shot, but that's something I would suggest for this image on there. That's the other one by Paul. Can't see a difference between them, but it's all part of the exercise. Well done. Astrid, I love the little sequence you've got here. So telling a story of the woman being kidnapped and being dragged into this cabin in the woods. The only thing I would watch with this is, again, because it's a Facebook image, I'd really encourage you, when you've got something like this, send it to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk, because I can give you much better feedback if I've got the full resolution files and I've got the shooting information, because I can't quite tell whether this is tack sharp. When I first looked at it, I thought maybe there's a little bit of blurring going on there, possibly with the hand. I'd love to know the shooting data on it. It gets stripped out by Facebook. On there. So those two begin to tell a story. Then this one, to my mind, it doesn't quite work with the other two. I think I know what you're trying to get at, that she's being kidnapped and now he's trying to abuse her with it. But it looks a bit more consensual, where the first two don't. So the storyline kind of breaks with it for me. I'd like to see. I'm not one for normally for these pictures of women being sort of abused. I feel a bit uncomfortable with that. But the storyline on this doesn't quite add up. The images are great, but the storyline, the third one doesn't quite sit right on there. And perhaps what I would do would be the third one in that sequence. We've had the two of him dragging her in. Is the maybe the final one might be him sitting outside the hut by himself. Maybe a few things lying on the ground, which could be interpreted various ways. So maybe an axe on the ground, something like that. Then it leaves a question for the viewer of, well, what's actually happened? Is she in there? Has he done away with her? What's gone on? That sort of approach I would take with those images on there. Barry still being plagued with foxes in his back garden by the looks of it. I like this one, licking the nose. This one, it's a crop too far, I think, on that, Barry. It's a nice shot, but having seen some of your other images from this of the fox, I think it's cropped in just that little bit too much on there, and it's a little bit soft. That one is a much sharper image on there. So John Barton again. I really like this one. I would consider the other week I showed the technique for cloning out blown out bits of cloud in the sky, and I'd encourage you to consider doing that on there. But it's a nice shot from the drone, nicely processed into black and white too. Oh, that was my edit, and we've gone all the way around. So let's have a look what's been going on in chat while I've been doing that. And oh, hang on, there we go. Oh no, that no, hang on, I'm having trouble with my buttons here, bear with me. Right, that's it. Oh, guess what, my chat's disconnected again. It does this every week. Let me have a look on the other version of this. Right. Rick saying you can create shade using a reflector, but you would increase the contrast, so subject to bright background. Diffuser will soften the light, reducing the light on the subject, but not as much as a reflector. Right, yeah. Yeah, Tim thanking Rick for the additional information on there. Right, okay, so nothing new on that. Right, so now let's move on. Oh, I lost a few people during that part of the talk, looking at my stats. There's a bit of a dip there. Don't know what's going on. Right, back over to here, and I think we're just about done which means, yeah, looked at the chat. Yep, definitely looked at the chat. The member photo of the week. This week, every week I choose a photo which becomes the banner for the Facebook group. And this week's photo is, big drum roll please, the one from Gary. My edit on Gary's photo to bring out the orange on there, and that will look like that when put onto the banner. I flipped the image round because I wanted to preserve this sort of area here, which is more interesting without putting the logo over it on there, and the easiest way to do that was to flip it. And so as we come to the end of this week's show, which was longer than I anticipated, I've got no more questions in chat as far as I can see. Let me have a look, quick check. No, nothing new in there on that. So just to say that next Sunday, what I'm going to do, there's not going to be an exercise next Sunday for the before and after challenge. It's going to be a week off on that to allow those of you who are a little bit behind the chance to catch up with the exercises from the last couple of weeks. So that won't be there. So next Sunday's session will be a catch up. It'll be feedback and Q&A. So please, if you've got things that you're images which haven't quite worked, like Max's one with the clouds and the moon, get them over to me at feedback at ians-studio.co.uk, and I'll look at them next week and I'll go through edits on some of those. Oh, and we've got a Q&Q session as opposed to a Q&A session. Right, it's meant to be a Q&A session. So that's going to be next week, and I'll probably put in an Affinity tutorial somewhere in there as well on that. So please post images to the Facebook group, particularly ones you want me to look at next week. And until next week, thanks for watching, folks, and keep making great photos. See you next Sunday. Right, this is the point I do the cut down version of the ending. So thanks for watching this cut down version of Ian's Studio Live. Full version is now in my academy, details of which are on the screen there. Please consider joining it. There's lots of resources there, but it's a great way of supporting these live streams by being an Academy member, and I appreciate everyone who is a member because that helps keep the live stream going as much as anything else. So thanks for that. Until you see the next live stream, which will be each Sunday night, thanks for watching, keep making great photos, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.